Welcome to the All Axxess Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and he's back again. We appreciate him taking the time. As always, our pleasure, Mr. Vince Russo. Vince, welcome to the show.
Man, you know what's really cool, bro? Because of this show, I got an email from Tom Buchanan the other day, which I thought was really, really cool. I can't tell you the last time I heard from Tom, and he said he was watching the show, and I thought that was really, really cool. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Glad you guys were able to reconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. So let's dive into 1996. You know, obviously you weren't, full-fledged writing team yet at this point, but coming off of the magazine, Mr. Perfect was there, obviously. It was more of a managerial role with Triple H and doing some commentary, of course. So Mr. Perfect they'd kind of tease it where it looked like he was going to maybe wrestle Triple H eventually. And then he would just kind of fizzle out and leave the World Wrestling Federation and, be with the WCW for a while, join the NWO. Do you know why that they never kind of completed that with Mr. Perfect and Triple H? Because it was really getting intense leading up to it.
Yeah, I could only think, again, man, every time it's something like that, I could only think it's money and contract, especially with a guy like Kurt, because, man, that's one of the major differences between now and then. It was a business back then. Yeah. And with those guys, yeah, man, they may have loved wrestling and they may have loved what they were doing, but first and foremost, it was a business. So a lot of times you would see guys disappear, Warrior. I mean, you saw it a million times, and it was always about money and contract. I mean, I was a huge Kurt Hennig fan. I remember, man, I was hit pretty hard when he passed away because, I never saw that one coming. But he was such a pro. But yeah, man, there's no question that it had nothing to do with creative, but just money and contract.
Any memories of Ray Traylor working with the Big Boss Man?
Yeah, same thing, man. He was a sweetheart of a guy. He really, he was really a good old Southern boy. I mean, that's who he was. But he was the kind of guy that everybody loved. Very, very like Owen. There are those guys that everybody just loved, and Ray was right up there with them.
So we touched on in previous episodes TNA a little bit in your time there, obviously. But we did get a fan question in, and they were looking for you to kind of elaborate more on your time with TNA from when you first arrived there, maybe who else was a part of the writing team with you behind the scenes, who else had some voice, as far as getting shows together and just that whole process behind the scenes in TNA.
Yeah, I was at TNA longer than I was with any company by far. I was with TNA on and off for the good part of 10 years. And basically, for the most part of that, it was myself, Double J, Jeff Jarrett, and Dutch Mantell. That's basically it. We would meet at Jeff's house. We would go over the creative. It was a good mix, man, because, Dutch was a great wrestler. So Dutch was really coming from the wrestling end. I was really coming from the character storyline end. Jeff had the best of both worlds. It was good, man. I never had an issue. We never argued. There were never major disagreements. I'd say early on, the biggest issue I had was, you got to understand, this was Jeff Jarrett's company. And Jeff lost his backer 2 weeks in. So then Dixie Carter's family put up the money. And that was very difficult for Jeff because this was his baby. This was his child. And now he had to answer to somebody else. And what Jeff tried to do is, I think he tried to intimidate Dixie a little when it came to the creative, because he did not want her to get involved creatively. Like, he looked at her as the money person and he did not want her to get involved creatively. So because there was that type of environment, I felt like I was middled a lot, and it sucked because at the end of the day, she's my boss. She's the one paying me, and Jeff's my good friend. And it really, really sucked. And I had to deal with that for a while. And then, we all know the story with Jeff and Karen Angle. And, then Jeff goes home, and it's literally, I don't know, maybe weeks later when Bischoff and Hogan came in. And when Bischoff and Hogan came in, man, it just turned into another wrestling company, man. And that's when I knew it was just going to be a matter of time before I left.
And TNA did have those homegrown talents, people who obviously, had made a name for themselves on the indie scene, but, you'd see the AJ Styles and the Christopher Daniels and the Kazarians and these guys bringing themselves to, heights they had never, been to. And obviously you were a big part of that. So, what was it like working with some of those young talents, particularly?
Joe, I'll be honest with you. At the beginning, it was great. It really was. I think I even think I managed AJ Styles for a while. But I got to tell you, man, there came a point, and I want to guess maybe it was 2005-ish. Scott D'Amore was bringing in a lot of guys from Canada and a lot of guys from Detroit, a lot of guys that had never wrestled here before. I mean, Petey Williams, Eric Young, Bobby Roode. There were a bunch of guys that he was bringing in, Motor City Machine Guns. And I got to tell you, man, I saw a clear, specific change in talent, because I had been used to WWE, WCW, TNA. I had been used to working with pros. And when I say working with pros, it goes back to what I said earlier. They treated it like a business. It was all about money and dollars and cents. These guys were not marks for the business. They may have loved wrestling, but they were not marks for the business. I mean, I can go up and down just the Scott Halls and the Kevin Nashes and the Hogans, and I can go on and on, the Jeff Jarretts. They may have loved wrestling. They were not marks for the business. So it was business first. And, I was a professional and they were a professional, and that was always the relationship. Didn't mean we always agreed on everything, but it was really a professional relationship. I started seeing this wave of talent coming in, and here's the first thing I noticed. Bro, they knew more about professional wrestling than I ever would. They thought they knew everything. And bro, you couldn't tell them anything. And I just got to the point, I'll be honest with you, man. I got to the point where I first said to myself, if this is where the business is going, like, I don't want to work with these people. They're not pros. Yeah. They're marks. I mean, literally, they're wrestling marks. And I don't want to work with this people. And also, quite frankly, Joe, I got the attitude where I'm not going to sit there and argue with a 20-something-year-old. So I got to the point of, you know what, bro? Go out there, do whatever you want to do. You're never going to get over. So go do whatever you want to. I'm not going to argue with you. Go do whatever you want to do. So, Joe, this is where it started. I'm telling you, it's as clear as day, and I'll break it down for you. So, the people like the Young Bucks come in, the Motor City Machine Guns, that style of wrestling, the X Division wrestlers. Here's what you started seeing. They're all walking around the back, and this is what you're seeing. They're memorizing their matches. That's what they're doing. They're memorizing spot for spot for spot all day long. Now, you got to understand, as a writer, and knowing the most important thing is storyline and character. When you go out there and you're memorizing spots, bro, the first thing that's going out the window is your character. That's the first thing. What I mean by that is they are so locked in on spot A to B to C to D to E to F that they're forgetting who the character is. They're forgetting to sell as the character. They're forgetting to let the crowd in. They're forgetting to go on the offensive. They're throwing their character out the window because they can't remember both. So now here's what starts happening. Slowly but surely now, everybody is just another wrestler on the card. And bro, I'm telling you, Joe, and I'm not exaggerating this, I saw this going back 20 years ago. That's when I first started seeing it. And Joe, I know you and I are old school, based on our conversations. And I got to tell you, I was not a fan of this. Yeah. This was not the wrestling business. This was not the business I was a fan of. This is not why I wanted to get into the business. And a lot really changed for me. And like I said, bro, that was 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, as a fan, you can't be invested in the moves if you're not invested in the talent themselves. You got to know that character.
Yep. I tell people this all the time. I tell them to this day on JCW, guys, this is not a disrespectful thing, but if you are athletic, anybody can be a wrestler. If you are athletic, I can teach the same move to 40 different guys, okay? And that's not being disrespectful at all. There's only one you. Nobody else can be you. I could do the same moves you do, but I can't be you. And that's where you're going to make your money, by being you. Right. But my God, bro, they all, again, I don't know if it's the Meltzer influence of the 5-star matches, and it became all about the match. And I really think, Joe, when you look at the landscape today, that's why these casual fans have been run off. They know it's a work. They know the matches aren't real. They never tuned into wrestling to see 20-minute wrestling matches. That's not what they tuned in for. And you have lost millions and millions of people because, you decided to listen to that very small niche audience where it's got to be wrestling. And the casual fan base is not interested. Joe, I got to tell you this, and this has been the truth since I started watching. I started writing day one in the business. So this has been the truth for 30 years. Every single week when JCW airs, I get a graph, and the graph tells you where they tuned out, where they came back, where they tuned out, where they came back. It tells you that. Yep. Every single show, and it has been this for 30 years. The Valley is the match. Every single show you look at, the match is the Valley, and then what you'll see is a peak for the finish. So what does that mean, bro? That means they fast forwarded to see what the finish of the match was going to be. Right. Then every other thing that takes place in the back, that's the peak. That's the peak. As soon as there's a wrestling match, we go down to the Valley and we stay in that Valley. That's the problem, bro. That's the reality. That's the reality. And people in the wrestling business don't want to hear that. That's not what they want to hear. That's the reality. So when Vince McMahon or Dixie Carter or WCW is paying money to get eyeballs on the show, what you're doing is you're giving them the peaks, the peaks, because you know damn well if they're not wrestling fans, they're going to tune out of the match. That has been going on since 1995.
Wow. And, your brighter days in TNA when things were on the upside for you there, who were some of your favorites to work with other than Jeff Jarrett? And, what would you say your favorite moment was while with that company?
Man, my favorite to work with, without a shadow of a doubt, probably any place I went, Joe, was Kurt Angle. He was such a freaking pro. I mean, when I tell you, if talent call was 2:00, for argument's sake, bro, 2:00, they don't start showing up till 2:30. Then they got to go to catering. Then after catering, you got to get them dressed. It's a whole process. When I tell you at 2:00 on the nose, Kurt Angle would be there, full gear, ready to go. That's a freaking pro. And Kurt made my life so easy. And he's such a good person, and he's such a good human being. So he was my favorite to work with, man, just because he made my job so easy. I loved working with Sting and kind of a little reinvention of Joker Sting.
Yeah.
That was an absolute blast. I had a lot of fun doing that. I thought the Main Event Mafia was done really, really, really well.
Yeah.
The thing about it, Joe, was though that really, really bothered me was, some people came in like, I would say Mick Foley and Booker T, and they just had the attitude that it was beneath them, like working at TNA was beneath them. And you could tell, when you were working with them, you could tell. And it was like, bro, that really sucked, because it's like, Dixie's paying you, you're getting paid well. We understand this isn't the WWE. We understand you aren't making WWE money, but you could tell a change in them. But on the other side of the coin, I got to tell you, I never felt that with Kevin Nash. I never felt that with Scott Steiner. It really depended on who the individual was. But like really, Mick, I had a real close relationship with Mick my whole career. We're from this, our high schools were competitors.
Oh, wow.
Mick's high school was literally 15 miles from my high school. We played them all the time in sports. So me and Mick, we go way, way, way back. And even him he came in where it was below him. And man, I can remember Mick wanted to come in, and I can remember meeting with Mick at Jeff's house. Here's why Mick wanted to come in. Because at that point in the WWE, he was on color. And when you're on color and you're an announcer, that means Vince is in your headsets.
Right.
Vince was driving him nuts. He could not stand that role. He couldn't deal with Vince telling him every single thing to do and say. And that's literally why he wanted to come to TNA. But then, like I said, when he got there, I mean, he kind of treated, and I think Mick would tell you that. I really do. I don't think I'm saying anything he wouldn't say. So, some guys were good. Some guys you just felt didn't want to be there. You know what I mean?
And shifting back to the World Wrestling Federation, what was it like working with Big Van Vader?
I never had a tight relationship with Vader at all. All I could always remember is, he would walk around literally smelling like vomit because he never washed his gear. I mean, it was horrible and it was gross. I swear to God, it was so bad that I always used to think of, bro, how could anybody work with him? Like, seriously, man, it was vomit. I mean, it was vomit. Bro, Kevin Nash did an entire podcast of what he went through every night, washing his gear in his hotel room. Yeah. Kevin laid out the whole thing. He would do it every single night. Vader would just have his and throw it in his suitcase and go out there the next night. And oh my God, here's the one thing though, bro, like that I'll never forget, and this still goes on to this freaking day, bro. Do you remember when Vader got arrested in Kuwait?
Yes, yeah.
On the talk show. Remember that, bro?
Absolutely.
Bro, obviously you're in Kuwait. You don't know what the hell is going to happen. Like if I'm Vader, I'm scared shit. Bro, I'm in creative with Vince and Bruce. And Vader gets arrested and Vader's in jail. They're holding him in Kuwait. Bro, Vince and Bruce are not taking his call. And they're not taking his call to fuck with him. And bro, they still do that to this day. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, bro, I don't think this is a place to play a freaking rib. The guy is in a prison overseas, literally scared for his life, and they're purposely not taking his calls and laughing about it.
Man.
And you could still see that today, man. The sense of humor, like you know what it is, bro. You know wrestling's all about the ribs, but they don't know that line. Like right. That was one time, like, bro, you gotta take his freaking call. They thought it was hysterical, man.
Oh man, what was Vince's initial reaction as it happened? You know, it's the first time you saw him when that happened.
Just that Vader was an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, like just doing something like that. Vince thought he was an absolute idiot, which was probably part of the reason why he wasn't taking the call.
So another one I wanted to ask you about, around that same time in the WWF, you'd see him on and off, had a couple different runs. Psycho Sid. What was it like to work with Sid?
God, bro, that's another one. Like, I swear to God, this drives me crazy when people talk about the best promos. How is Sid's name never in the conversation? When he was Psycho Sid, bro, he was so intense and so good. I loved Sid Udy, bro. I thought Sid was so good. And like I said, with those promos and his presence, and I always say this, Joe, and a lot of people they don't want to hear this. And Vince Russo is this, that, and the other thing. I always say this about Sid, bro. When you come from New York and you see Southern wrestlers, they're pussies. They've got that accent. And bro, when you look at like places like New York, Chicago, California, bro, when somebody's got that Southern accent and that Southern drawl, it is very difficult for them to get over. Because like I said, for the rest of the country, that doesn't reek tough guy.
Right. Sid,
in my opinion, was the only one with that Southern accent that got over, because look at him. Look at him, bro. Like, it doesn't matter what was, you knew this guy was going to kill you. And he was the one guy that had that Southern accent, but was over huge. And a lot of people will say to me, oh, bro, what about Dusty? I'm like, that was a Southern accent. You're going to tell me Dusty? No, bro. And then they would use Austin. And I'm like, no, Austin was a Texas redneck. I'm talking about down south. Yeah. But I always get, bro, the two guys that never are even in the conversation promo-wise. Number one, Sid, and number two, William Moody. Bro, there wasn't a greater storyteller in the business than Paul Bearer. There never will be. There never will be. And it drives me nuts how he is never brought in the conversation of best pro. Bro, without Paul Bearer, the whole Undertaker Kane thing, that would have never happened. There had to be a narrator. There had to be a storyteller. And it was him. And it blew, because I work so closely with him every week. And when guys like that aren't in the conversation, it drives me freaking crazy, man.
Now, did you give William Moody obviously some pointers as to, what to get across as far as the point, but did he kind of do his own promos?
Oh, 1000%, man.
Okay.
1000%. He was tuned into the story. He knew what the story was. If there was anything in particular I needed him to get in, we would go over that stuff. Bro, 1000% him. I wish I could sit here and take that credit.
Yeah.
1000%. And that's why it bothers me so much. I worked with this guy week in, week out. And listen, I am not a fan of Paul Heyman at all. And I'll tell you why. Bro, for the last 20 years, Paul Heyman has cut the same exact promo. There's never a story. It's the same promo. Paul Bearer told stories. Paul Bearer got you from point A to point B to point C to point D and was so damn good. And I just think, man, maybe it was because he was attached to The Undertaker, and The Undertaker, of course, was a legend. This dude never, ever got his just desserts, in my opinion.
I was always a huge fan of Sid, and I feel like he never gets his flowers, like you mentioned. He certainly in the way of promos, but he would start off, whispering, and really it was captivating, and it would bring you in, and then he'd start screaming. And, just as far as how much he was over as well. I mean, his ovations were massive. I was there in person many times, and his pops were huge.
And remember in those promos when he would go into that laugh? He was great. He cut. And bro, I'm talking about like one take. I did not sit there with Sid through 10 takes. One freaking take, Sid. Paul Bearer, one take. Mr. Backlund, one take.
Oh, man,
Scott Steiner Math, one take. These were one take guys, man. One take guys.
As Mr. Backlund, I mean, he was tremendous.
Joe, I swear to you, he was the only guy, and I am not kidding you because I got to work so closely with him as Mr. Backlund. I would be producing all that stuff. I am not kidding you. Tears would be rolling down my face. That's how freaking entertained. And that's the stuff. It's like, have people forgotten like all that stuff that was so good and so great? I mean, they always talk about, oh, great promo. Oh, Ric Flair. Okay, yeah, I get it. But so many guys that was so good never even get mentioned.
Well, we talked about, Jonathan Taylor Thomas playing chess. The moment he said checkmate, Bob snapped, and it was just beautiful. It was so...
What about Louis Gianfrido? Oh my God, are you kidding me? Like that might have been, Louis kind of mentored me. When I came in as the editor, Louis was the assistant, and Louis was old school gangster. Louis's best person to hang around with was Arnold Skaaland. Louis and Arnold Skaaland were very tight. So you had a guy that was so serious about old school wrestling. And then when they had him do that spot, like to Louis, like this, so the spot of how important it was to Louis, and then Backlund, that may have been like one of the most flawless spots in the history of wrestling. Then Savage hits the ring from the announce position. God, bro, like, what happened to that stuff that was just so great?
Right. And those were the little moments on the show.
Yes.
They were huge,
Yes.
And that you remember to this day. And another great one was on Superstars when Bob ended up doing the chicken wing to Arnold Skaaland. That was
Yeah. Bro, I swear to God, man, stuff you have to see to really believe. Bob, when I was at TNA, so keep in mind, he's older now. Bro, the ring steps. He would walk up and down the ring steps for 2 hours straight. 2 hours straight. Everybody's going over their match and this and that. He's in the arena doing those stuff. Dripping. Stuff like that, bro, you never, ever forget. And that's why, people say, oh, Vince, you're hard on wrestling today. Yeah, bro, I'm hard on it, and I'm hard at the people in it because of what I saw. Because, I saw greatness. I saw real pros. And to see Backlund do that for 2 hours straight, every taping, you don't forget things like that, man.
Right, exactly. Yeah. People aren't doing that nowadays, that's for sure.
No.
Let's talk about your consulting job with WWE when you would go back to do that, and how that unfolded for you, and how that even came about.
Man, that came about because the ratings kept slipping and slipping and slipping. And at the time, I owned a CD warehouse, which was a retail store in Atlanta. And Disco used to come in all the time. And Glenn said to me, Vince, when that rating goes under a 3, you gotta call Vince. And I said, okay, never thinking the rating was going to go under a 3. I swear, I never thought, with where we had it.
Yeah.
I never thought, and sure enough, the rating went below a 3. So I called him, and he met with me immediately. And I went to his house, and we talked about creative. Nobody knew I was in Connecticut. We talked about creative, and I gave him my ideas. I pitched to him, you need to bring Eric Bischoff in. Before Eric Bischoff ever went to the WWE, I was not by any means Eric's biggest fan. We don't like each other, but I knew Eric is such a great performer. You got to bring him in. I was the one that told Vince to bring Eric to WWE. So we come to a money agreement. Everything's done. So I said to Vince, how are we going to do this? And my role was going to be, I was going to oversee SmackDown and Raw. I said, how are we going to do this? Oh, you're just going to show up at TV and I'm going to tell I said, no. We're not doing it that way. That's the kiss of death. If you think I'm just going to show up and you're going to tell everybody, oh yeah, Vince is back, and by the way, he's your boss, we're not doing it that way. So he said, okay, the creative is meeting tomorrow. Can you stay overnight? I'll bring you to creative tomorrow. I said, no problem. I stayed overnight. I even had breakfast with Shane the next morning. Shane was so psyched about me coming back. And Vince brings me to the television meeting, the television facility, and brings me to the writer's room. Bro, I walk in there, and there are 12 people in that room. Now, you got to understand, when I left, bro, at the end of 1999, this is 2002. So a little over 2 years. When I left, it was me and Ed. That's it. Me and Ed. And I walk into this room, and there's like 10, 12 people, writers in this room. And I was like, how did it get to this? Like a two-man team was so easy. So basically at that time, the ratings are in the shitter. So I sit there and I literally lay out a year of creative. Okay, now in that meeting are Paul Heyman and Michael Hayes. Now, Joe, you got to understand something about me. I'm smarter than every person in the room. They may think they're smarter than me. They never were. They never will be. I know damn well, as I'm laying out this story and they're all there with their mouths, I know damn well what's running through their minds is, if Vince hires Vince, there's no need for any of us in this room. So I also know the minute I leave and Vince comes in, they're going to absolutely bury me. But you also have to understand, bro, that's totally fine with me, because if Vince wants to go with what's in that room, they're never going to bring the ratings up. There's no question in my mind. So sure enough, I leave. Vince comes back while I'm in the air flying home from Connecticut. Keep in mind, bro, Vince was even buying my house. He was going to buy my house and sell it to get me like to Connecticut immediately. Wow. Immediately. He was going to, I was literally just going to sell. He was going to get real estate to sell the house. And while I'm in the air, one other thing, Joe, I forgot to mention, one other little thing. So everybody's in that room except Stephanie McMahon. So now I've got to go into another room and I've got to take a call from Stephanie. Okay. Now, Joe, you got to understand, in 1999, when I last left the WWE, it was me and Ed Ferrara. Stephanie was sitting in on the creative meetings, learning, listening, never opening her mouth. So now I get on that phone call. She is talking to me like I am the redheaded stepchild. And again, let's look at the facts. At that point, she's in charge of creative, which means Triple H is right there alongside of her, which means if you bring in Vince Russo that knows more about creative than we do, it definitely hurts them. So while she's talking like this to me, I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. Like they do not want me here. She does not want me here. Paul does not want me here. This is not going to work. And then sure enough, as I'm flying home, Vince is blowing up my phone. He's calling my wife. And as soon as I get home, I call him back. He says, Vince, this isn't going to work. I said, oh, Vince, let me guess why. Because when I left the writer's room and you came in, everybody in that room buried me. Is that why, Vince? And I said to him, Vince, that's fine with me. Absolutely fine. But I'm telling you right now, with the people you have in that room, you're never going to turn the product around. You're never going to turn the product around. And I found out he hired me without ever smartening Stephanie up. So without telling Stephanie he was meeting with me, we were talking. He didn't tell her till after he hired me. And that's when he knew what I was telling him was true, because that's where he shifted to plan B, come in and be a consultant. Because he knew what I was saying was right, but nobody wanted me there. Shane wanted me there. Vince wanted me there. Nobody else wanted me there. And so I agreed to be a consultant, but then TNA started. So I literally called Stephanie and I said, I want you to know, I don't want you to read it in dirt sheets or anywhere else. I'm going to TNA. I'm going to check it out. There may be an opportunity for me there, but I just want to let you know. And sure enough, that's exactly what I did. I told Jeff I was going to go work for him. I came back and I called her and I said, listen, I'm going to TNA. She goes, I'll never forget. She goes, oh, why, Vince? We want you here. I laughed at her. I laughed at her. I'm like, no, Stephanie, you don't want me there. It's clear you didn't want me there. No hard feelings. I'm going to work at TNA.
So looking at your career as a whole, what is the favorite feud that you have written? Any promotion?
God, that's a good question, because I never really, I would have to say this. I never really had to break it down to a feud. There's never going to be a better feud in the history of wrestling. There never was, than McMahon and Austin. You know, Joe, it's so funny, bro, because this is the difference between Vince McMahon and Triple H. Bro, it's a running gag how Triple H puts himself on everything. The video game, the WrestleMania ad. He voices everything over, like all over the place. You never saw Vince McMahon do that, because that should be the talent. I want to get the talent over. We got to get the talent out there. He never did that himself. So I'm reviewing the Attitude Era, and I've got to the point where Vince pulled himself off of the show because he didn't want to take any more time from the talent.
Sure.
And I have always said, bro, no one talent is bigger than the company. I've always said that. Bro, when Vince came out of that show, the product was clearly not as good as it was with him on it. Without a shadow of a doubt, something was missing, and it was Vince. And it's just so funny because when I look back, I know why he took himself out of the show. And then you're seeing Triple H in his spot that puts himself before the talent every chance he gets.
Yeah.
But that was the greatest feud without a shadow of it. Nothing will ever match that.
So let's go back to the early Hall of Fames. At this point, you're not on the writing team, but you're within the magazine for WWF. So those early WWF Hall of Fame ceremonies, obviously it started with Andre in 93. He was the only inductee, but there'd be full classes, 94, 95, 96. And you'd see the Lou Albanos and the Bobo Brazils and the Gorilla Monsoons be inducted. What was it like being there, or were you there, as a member of the company for those early ceremonies when they were more intimate and there weren't really as many fans?
Man, I got to be honest with you, Joe. Thank God, and I don't know how I skated this. I never went to a Hall of Fame ceremony when I was there. I went to one Hall of Fame ceremony. I could tell you exactly what it was. It was the year Zbyszko. And I didn't even go to ceremony. I was somebody paid me to go down there and work a convention, Justin LaBar. He hired me for like the weekend. So I had to sit in this dining room and watch the Hall of Fame with everybody else. Oh my God, it was agonizing to me. I never thought Larry Zbyszko was going to end his speech. It went on and on. And bro, that is the only time I have ever seen a Hall of Fame ceremony. I've never watched it since. I didn't go to any before. That's the only time I watched it because I was paid to sit there with the other people.
Right. You mentioned conventions. What's your take on the convention scene? I remember meeting you at the Turnbuckle Promotions Convention. It was in New York back in 2007. And I feel like you're in high demand, but I feel like you're never at conventions. Never. So what's your take on that?
Joe, here's my take on this. And this is what I hate about wrestling in general. Bro, I can't tell you how many people I worked with on a weekly basis for years and years and years. Everything's good. There's never an issue. Bro, I can't even tell you or remember issues with talent. They were so few and far between that I could tell you specifically what they were. I'll never forget, bro. I'll never forget. I remember this, a couple of things. Bro, we were going into a WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden, and the main event was booked. And it was a three-way between Rock, Austin, and Mick. And I had the privilege of telling Mick, brother, not only are you going to be in the main event of Madison Square Garden, you're going to be in the main event of Madison Square Garden WrestleMania. It meant the world to Mick. So, bro, we're at a TV, and for whatever reason, Shawn shows up. This is when Shawn's on the pills, whatever Shawn was on. And his reason for being there was to cause havoc. And he's there. He catches wind of what the main event of WrestleMania is, starts working Rock, starts working Austin, starts working Vince. The next thing you know, they take Mick out of the main event. Okay? So, of course, who's got to tell Mick? Not them. I do. I'm the one that's got to tell Mick. And I'll never forget, I was so freaking pissed off at Shawn that, I cut a promo up and down on Shawn to Hunter, knowing Hunter was going to tell Shawn. And I'll never forget, Shawn comes over to me And I'll never forget this line for as long as I live. This was a time when like everybody was kicking Sean's ass. The Harris brothers got him at Madison Square Garden. The guy in the army beat him up, like the whole 9 yards. So Sean comes up to me pissed off because I cut a promo on him. And the first thing he said to me was, I know I could take you. That was the first thing. And that like popped me. I'll never forget it. But I remember like that instant with Sean. I remember one time I got so hot because DX was pulling shit at TV and there was no time to pull shit. And I'll never forget, without thinking, I turned to Billy Gunn and I said, F you, Billy. Bro, first of all, you don't ever talk to talent that way. I don't care how mad you get. And like as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I'm like, why? Bro, literally, Road Dogg was like in my face half a second later. I can remember the instances where there was any kind of heat. And bro, they were moments. I went on to work with Sean. Obviously, I went on to work with DX. Those were moments where it was kind of tempers. Getting back to the conventions, and this is why I never go to conventions, bro, because I work with so many people for so many years and everything's fine and there's no issue. And then all of a sudden, you're hearing an interview where they're burying you. And I'm just sitting here saying, bro, you worked with me for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, never said anything to me. Now, 10 years later, I've got to find out. Joe, here's the perfect case in point. I'll never forget this. Freaking Piper has heat with me. Okay? Now, you got to understand, Joe, I think you understand with all these interviews we've done together, I think it is clear to you the pedestal that I put legends on.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. So we're talking Piper now. Roddy freaking Piper. So this guy's got heat with me. There was the incident at TNA, which was a 100% shoot. He didn't know I was there. I didn't know he was there, but I wasn't going to let him carry on about me killing Owen Hart. So I had to go out there. But Piper hated me. Why? I had no idea. No, I never disrespected him, never said, no idea. So finally, years and years and years later, he wants to have me on his show. Okay? And I'm like, bro, as far as I know, I've done nothing to you, so I got no problem going on the show. No problem, right? So now I'm on this show and Roddy's being Roddy, like trying to get over on me and this, that, and the other thing. So it finally, I'm finally like, bro, I have no idea what your heat is with me. I've never disrespected you. I've always respected you. I've always put you on. I don't understand this. Bro, do you know what the heat was? I found out on that day. Bro, here was the heat Piper had with me. I'm at WCW. I'm working with Piper for the first day. Okay?
Right.
Piper comes into the building. Joe, when you're working a show, people are coming in at all different times. It's not like they empty the bus at 2:00 and here comes all the talent. It don't work that way. You're constantly, where's Kevin? Where's Scott? They come in whenever. So apparently, Piper showed up. Bro, Ed Ferrara saw Piper before I did. So Ed was very much like me with the legends. We respected this guy. As soon as Ed saw Piper, Ed went up to him, out of respect, right? Bro, I didn't see Piper until after Ed saw him. I was off doing something else. So Ed meets Piper. However long after that, then I see Piper. Bro, in his mind, I big timed him. I sent my jabroni. I sent my jabroni to say hello to him before I said hello to him. And I was on the show with him live. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, bro? Like, that's your heat with me? Did it ever dawn on you that Ed saw you first? Like, did that you really, after all these years, you convince yourself that I was trying to big time you? That's why I don't do conventions. Because you're walking into this pit. Who's got heat with you? Who doesn't have heat with you? Who heard you said this? Bro, I don't freaking need that. I'm the kind of guy that, bro, if I got heat with you or you've got heat with me, then you say something to me. Then you say something to me and let's squash the heat. But to hear people talking about me that I worked with, bro, do you know how close I produced Jim Cornette at TNA? I was his producer. Never one freaking time did this guy ever say anything to my face. Not one single time. And we worked this close to each other. Yeah. But that's why I don't do conventions, because I don't need the drama. Who's got heat with me because they didn't go over so-and-so in 1998. I don't need that bullshit in my life. That's why I try to stay away from it.
That makes sense. I mean, you don't want to be in the middle of a signing and then be confronted by somebody or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. So another question I was going to ask you about was, we spoke about Luna and Sonny, how they got into it backstage. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Harris brothers and Shawn. If you could elaborate on that story, because I never heard that one. And if there were any other brawls or fights that you've ever witnessed backstage anywhere.
Well, yeah, the Harris brothers and Shawn, that's a classic one, because we were at the Garden, and that's where Shawn had so much heat in the locker room because, again, man, he was out of control at that time, out of control, and he'll tell you that. I'm not, but he was always like attached to Kevin for that reason. Okay. Right. So they were at Madison Square Garden, bro. And Shawn said or did something about the Harris brothers. They got him in a room by himself. There was no Kevin. They locked the door behind him. They jacked him up against the wall. Bro, you got to understand with the Harris brothers, because I'm still close to them to this day. Bro, those guys were the real deal. Like, those guys walked into bars looking for bar fights against 8 people. They weren't looking for 2-on-2s. They were looking to pick up pool cues, break them over. That's what they did, But meanwhile, if you knew them, they were like gentle giants. Yeah. But that's really who they were. But they got Shawn one day at the Garden by himself in that room and just scared the ever-loving shit out of him. And yeah, but as far as other fights, man, like I told you, I was in the middle of that one with Luna and Sonny that I'll never forget. But well, I remember when Kevin went after Samoa Joe at TNA because Joe had said some things about Scott Hall that really pissed Kevin off. I remember that one. But man, I don't remember. Well, this one was funny. During the height of Bret and Shawn hating each other, okay? I'll never forget, man. We're at that TV, and I'm in Vince's office on the road, and Pat Patterson comes in laughing hysterically. And that was the night that Bret and Shawn had that fight in the shower. And I guess Bret ripped out like a patch of Shawn's hair. And Pat must have just caught wind of it. And he came in and he told me and Vince. But yeah, it was that situation between Bret and Shawn during that time was very, very serious.
My last question I had was, 7-foot Kurgan. He was obviously Kurgan the Interrogator, major heel. He had the look. He just was a great force, I thought. And, then for him to kind of change over to the Oddities, I thought was kind of strange. I mean, I guess for Oddities, it makes sense because you have all the big guys being goofy. But at the same time, why was Kurgan not taken more seriously and kind of given a better run as a heel?
Well, again, I want to say, and again, I'm not passing the buck, Joe, but I was nowhere near creative when Kurgan what was a part of things. I mean, I think he was already in the oddities, or he was already out of favor. Bro, when you look back at the history of the WWE, they have a problem getting big men over. I mean, they really do. Look at now, Almost. Almost is today's Kurgan, and then there was the Giant Gonzalez. They've had these big giants over the year that they always had a problem getting over. Kurgan fit in that person in that category. But another thing about Kurgan, which doesn't surprise me that he went on to make movies and stuff, bro, the guy had a great personality. I mean, he was funny, he was witty, but man, it surprises me how many big guys they really failed to get over.
Yeah. And it's the eve of the Royal Rumble, WWE Royal Rumble, Saudi Arabia. They built the arena in, a few weeks, it seems. Kind of crazy. But, obviously you don't follow the product and you're so busy with JCW. But if you had to throw a prediction out there, who's taking the Royal Rumble? Who's the company you're going to give that to?
Bro, well, I was saying this prior to the booking. Bro, freaking Triple H loves Sami Zayn. And it's ridiculous, Joe, because one thing I learned in wrestling, and I learned this 2 weeks in, bro, you can't be in a creative position and play favorites. You can't, bro. First of all, nobody's your friend. The talent is always using you to get ahead. I always get accused of, oh, well, Vince, what about Double J when you went to WCW? Well, let me explain that to you. Was Double J my friend? Yeah, Double J was my friend. But Jeff Jarrett never got hurt, ever. So you knew 100% of the time you could count on Jeff, number one. Number two, Jeff was one of the best heels of all time. What does that mean? That means that as a great heel, he's going to get your baby faces over. Jeff was a great technical wrestler, like right behind the Bret Hart. So him being my buddy had nothing to do with it. Jeff was very dependable. Jeff could get baby faces over. But, you learn there are no favorites, and it was always an even playing field for me. Bro, they got this fascination with Sami Zayn, who in my opinion looks like a freaking homeless guy. And this goes back to the casuals. The casuals are looking at Sami Zayn. That guy beat Gunther? You want me to believe that guy beat Gunther? And I was saying all along, bro, the Royal Rumble's in Saudi. They're going to put Sami over. I was saying that all along. I was a week too early because they put him over in the Fatal 4 to give him the match with Drew McIntyre. But I don't know. Well, I would say, bro, if it's me, the one who I'm going with right now would probably be Jacob Fatu. If it were me, that is the guy that's got the it factor, that's got that rawness, that looks unique, that it's going to be easy to get the people behind. That would be my choice.
It's a great choice. And obviously, in closing, you're still very active today, but fast forward many years from now, looking back at your career as a whole, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be?
Bro, I say this all the time, Joe, and I honestly mean this. I don't want it is not important for me at all to have my legacy connected to professional wrestling. I swear to you, man, I really want my legacy to be, man, good husband, good father, good son, good friend. That's the stuff that's important to me, bro. And it's so hard for people to understand. Wrestling was just another job that I had. That's all it was. It wasn't this passion. It wasn't this dream. It wasn't this be all end all. Bro, no matter what job I've had in my life, okay, I've always taken great pride in my work. and I always want to do the absolute best I can in regardless of what I'm doing. And I think a lot of that has to do with me being a Christian guy. And I know, like, God put me here for a reason. And I know I always want to glorify him. So I'm always trying to be the best I can be. And it's the same with JCW. I mean, I'm working JCW now the same way I was writing the Attitude Era. I'm a very prideful person. I take pride in what I do. So I'd rather be looked at as the man and the dad and the husband and the father than what I did in my wrestling career. And I say that with all honesty.
And again, just let the fans know where JCW and yourself can be found.
Yeah, guys, please, man, we need your support, JCW. And I'm not, I always watch these Tony Khan promos where it's just, All In was the best show we ever did, and the Continental Classic was the best show, and this one had a great match, and that one had a great match, and these two had a great match. Me and Violent J, here's what we say. Just watch 2 episodes. It's that simple. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. All we could ask you to do, watch 2 episodes of JCW Lunacy. There's a new episode every Thursday night, 7:00 on YouTube. Watch 2 episodes. That's all we ask. We put our money where our mouth is. Also, I still got Russo's brand on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Russo TWC. If you've never been a Patreon, you can get a free week. You could try us out. It will cost you nothing. Patreon.com/Russo TWC.
Awesome, Vince. Well, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you being here once again.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed these conversations. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. For Vince Russo, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been part 5 with Vince, and we will see you all next time here on the All Access Entertainment Podcast.